Welcome back. Now, on this day in 1955, a historic event of the Congress of the People, over 3,000 ordinary South Africans and from different political parties with non-racial ideals gathered in Kliptown in Johannesburg to pledge and adopt the Freedom Charter. The document became the cornerstone of the country's democracy and constitutional rights, with principles stating that all shall be equal before the law. The land shall be shared among those who work it, among other things. And as we mark 70 years of the Freedom Charter, this morning we take a look at how much has been achieved since the adoption of this historic document. And to help us discuss this, we joined on the line now by ANC Spokesperson Mahlengi Bhengu. Thanks so much, Ms. Bhengu, for your time this morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, and thank you very much for taking time as the public broadcaster to reflect on the significance of the Charter.
It is a very important charter because it really does give instruction to what is the cornerstone of South African society and the rules by which we live, because it is from this Freedom Charter that we derive our constitution as a nation as well, with that preamble also being essentially the preamble of our constitution. So let's start with the people shall govern, basically talking to the rights of the people of South Africa. I know the other day you did an interview as the ANC with the SABC, and one of the things that was said was that so far about 80% of the ideals of the Freedom Charter have been realized. But let's try and wade through them, starting with the people shall govern. How do you believe the government of the day has succeeded in making that a reality?
Well, what the Charter envisioned, if you look at the detail below that clause, what the Charter envisaged is much of it actually has been achieved. It spoke about universal suffrage, spoke about the right to vote, spoke about all cultural and linguistic communities being recognized, spoke about a number of things. The fact that we have 3 organs of state, the judiciary that is independent, absolutely independent as far as what we know as South Africans. We have parliament, we've got the executive arm of the state, and we have public participation embedded in the Constitution of South Africa is indicative of the extent to which we have gone very far in as far as this particular clause of the Freedom Charter. And I do want to even do a quick disclaimer as the ANC. We always say that there are clauses of the Freedom Charter that should be the utmost priority. But where the matter of participatory democracy, the people shall govern, a lot has been done. I mean, you can't pass legislation in South Africa without taking into account representations by the people of our country in their organized formations or in their independent ways. There are so many examples that can be used to demonstrate that indeed the people in South Africa have avenues to govern. And the people includes organized people, such as in political parties, in trade unions. The fact that trade unions today are able to influence how the workplace or the labor market is managed. All of those things that exist in law in South Africa are actually happening.
So how would you respond then, Ms. Bhengu, to those who say in terms of meaningful public participation? Yes, the laws of the land do allow for all of the avenues that you've just outlined. However, when it comes down to meaningful participation by the broader public, is that actually happening? If one looks, for example, at what happens in Parliament, which you also mentioned. So the question becomes, has government, for example, in Parliament, replaced people's power with party power? And I ask this on the back of, having heard former president of the ANC say that the party comes first. So is this about people's power or is it about party power?
Well, I'm not going to ask you which president of the ANC said that, but I think South Africans already know.
Yes.
The ANC is a very self-cleansing machinery. There's no way the party can come first. The people, this is the injunction of the Freedom Charter. The people of South Africa comes first. Where it concerns this ideal or the concept of a meaningful public participation, and I'm glad you asked the question, Sakina, because before being the spokesperson of the ANC, I worked at the legislature, and one of my responsibilities was to foster this idea of meaningful public participation in legislative affairs. The people of South Africa have agency. Let us not present a picture that suggests that it's only political parties. The constitution of this country allows South Africans to exercise their agency. Government, state, the judiciary, and parliament needs to enable that environment. And I strongly believe that that environment is enabled. When you're called to come before a committee or submit your petition and be called to, once you've submitted a petition about a matter in the street or a matter in your locality, and you're asked to come to the legislature to present this petition such so that legislators can reflect on it and take a decision via the House resolution, that is meaningful public participation. That's just by one example. Then there are oversight visits. In fact, this is the seventh democratic parliament is an example of where we are going towards meaningful public participation. And I wouldn't suggest that it's already a done deal, but there is a lot of progress. Look at how the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education in Parliament has ensured that there's accountability. Look at how the work that is being done by the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. We've seen a parliament that is robust, not on the basis of noise making, but on the basis of proper oversight and scrutiny. That forms part of the people shall govern when Parliament holds public representatives and state entities to account. I do think that South Africa is really on an upward trajectory in as far as this notion that the people shall govern. In this country, very much unlike many other countries, not just in the continent, all over the world, in this country, there are so many avenues to take government to task, including Parliament to task. So I'd like to suggest that in 30 years, we've done great in as far as this clause of the Freedom Charter is concerned. In South Africa, no one gets, except for a few incidents where whistleblowers were intimidated. But we have whistleblowers that walk amongst all of us every day. We see them, that are actually secured by the knowledge that South Africans will protect them because they know that that whistleblower is asking and is searching for the truth or, working with the people of South Africa.
I think, Ms. Bhengu, you'll find that many whistleblowers, I was in fact reading an article this past weekend about a whistleblower who basically was lamenting the fact that she had her whole life turned upside down for being a whistleblower. Very current case. You had the likes of Babita Deokaran murdered, not the only one. And then you had people who've had to leave the country because they were whistleblowers. And some who are still to this day fighting for protection from the state, as in the Cindy Somakatla case, where people are not getting the sort of protection that they need and find that should they become whistleblowers, their lives are turned upside down. And I want to say that, but I want to park it because there's so much to talk about around the Freedom Charter, and we'll have to make time to discuss more discursively some of these matters. But I want to go to the other important matter contained in the Freedom Charter. All of them are, of course, but central, and so many people, when asked about the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, talk about the land question. Maibuye is the sort of rallying cry right now in terms of the land question, because the Charter actually promised that the land shall be shared amongst all those who work it. And yet, South Africans today still decry the fact that they believe that land redistribution has been very slow. The informal settlements around us are growing. So what would you say are the policy failures that would account for the enduring land injustice in the country?
One of them, of course, excuse me, one of them, of course, is the in-migration patterns, totally unanticipated, not just by the Freedom Charter, even by our Constitution adopted in 1996, Sakina. The in-migration patterns, if you look at Gauteng, if you had a budget of, 1 billion budget to fix up issues related to land ownership, title deeds programs, and all of that. And there is land availability to recycle people to habitable environments. You now have to deal with the reality of immigration, particularly in a province such as Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, as well as, particularly those two provinces, although now it's affected the rest of South Africa. Then it means you really need to pivot in terms of your strategy. It also slows down the pace at which you can ensure that people are living in habitable homes. And when the Freedom Charter said that, people tend to oversimplify the matter that it means people must be doing agriculture. No. The land shall be shared among those who work it. It simply means, comfort from a land ownership and redistribution pattern. So for me, I think that is a very stuck difficulty at the moment. But at the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge that there's a figure, and I'll need to send this figure to Morning Live, of how many title deeds have been handed over to those deserving of the handing over of title deeds, giving people dignity, and making sure that they are not seen as tenants all of their lives. The title deeds program that is always accompanied by what is known as the Title Deeds Friday of government, which hardly gets any exposure from our own colleagues in the media, has done so much for South Africa across the country. There's a lot of work that is being done. Thirdly, the decision to ensure the passage of and the enactment and ascension of the Land Expropriation Act by the President of South Africa is one of those contributions to accelerate access to the land in South Africa for public use, for beneficiation for those who deserve to benefit from the land that is available, and the land and public infrastructure that deserves to be used better at the moment. So I would say that there are a number of challenges in this regard. I think we will be the first people to acknowledge that as the African National Congress, but work is being done.
Let me latch that on to another call that the Charter makes, which is for the wealth of the country to be shared among all. Now, some would argue that in practice, economic policy has enabled only the elite or those who are connected to the elite to accumulate wealth through BEE deals, tenderpreneurship. So would you say government and through government policy, has government served the many of this country or just the connected few? Also, given that we are the most unequal society in the world, and I would like to say, Ms. Bhengu, that inequality is our post-apartheid apartheid. So how is government faring in dealing with that crisis?
I would imagine that the issue of South Africa's economic outlook, I think all of us know that we are not doing well. And as a result of which, a number of people that are deserving of playing a part in economic participation have not, if you like, laid claim to that democratic dividend as it were. So that, if you look at all the clauses in the Freedom Charter, this particular clause, the wealth the one about the wealth, and the other about the land question, remains the two sticking points in the realization of the objectives of the Freedom Charter. We have said as the African National Congress that these are the things that we are focusing on. We have started working on making sure that broad-based Black economic empowerment is repurposed to meet its original objectives. And there can be no doubt, though, that the South Africa we inherited in 1994, where there was absolutely no participation by Black people in the economy, I'm not even certain that we are actually being thorough when we are making a assertion that suggests that it's only a few that have benefited. It's 30 years of democracy. It may seem like a long time, but to build a country that has got a Black middle class, such as what South Africa now has, I'm not certain that the Triple BE has not worked for the benefit of Black people.
And I think
there's a tendency, though, to focus on multimillionaires that are known, a Tokyo Sekwale, a Andile Ngaba, and actually we omit to look at how Triple BE, together with employment equity, how it has benefited a lot of public sector professionals, corporate sector professionals who are Black, who are women. Of course, the part about women needs a further interrogation.
Exactly.
So I'm not in agreement that Triple BE has only worked for a few. I think it's more like a clickbait type of talk that is always in the social media and is not really interrogated. We have to look at each province, each area, break it down, and look at how many people are in a better position than we were in 1994.
I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that, to extrapolate that further with you, Ms. Bhengu, because I think it is worth interrogating. Even the sentiment of the middle class. Are we really middle class if you are 2-3 paychecks away from joining, the ranks of the poor again? But I'm happy to have that conversation with you because it's an interesting conversation. And as you rightly say, we need to speak to the facts around these matters. But I thank you so much for your time. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. ANC National Spokesperson Ms. Mahlengi Bhengu speaking to us there. And this is about the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, adopted 70 years ago today in Kliptown in 1955.